Here for the Mendocino Local Agency Formation Commission of Monday, February 5th. First of all, thank you for putting out on the board Mendocino Local Agency Commission meeting. Thank you, instead of LAFCo. We'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Present.
Commissioner Doble.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner McCowan.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Orth.
Here.
Commissioner Hamburg. Here. Commissioner Rosenberg.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here. Thank you. Number 2, public expression. Is there anybody wish to address the commission on an item not on the agenda? I presume you're here for the workshops. Seeing none, we'll move on to other business. City and county representative appointments. Roma, do we have any updates on that?
I don't believe the City Select Committee has been able to meet yet unless some of the city members have an update for us.
I corresponded with Carla Van Hagen this morning to double check. There was a tentative meeting scheduled for the 7th of this week, but she's having difficulty getting a few of the mayors together, so she's going to try to reschedule. And she doesn't know when. She's going to throw out some dates, I think, later today.
Good. And then the special district, those aren't due until the 15th of this month?
That's correct.
Okay.
We have not received any nominations yet. So.
Okay. All right, we'll go on to selection of officers and appointments to committees. The commission will vote on efforts for 2018 to elect a chair and vice chair, and then appoint commissioners to executive and policy and procedure committee. Due to our policies and procedures, the executive officers will conduct the election. Are you ready?
I wasn't sure if we wanted to wait until the City Select Committee had appointed someone.
For a chair?
Oh, no, for the committees.
Oh.
Yeah, because I could be out depending on what happens, I'm assuming.
Well, let's worry about that later. Let's move on to the chair and vice chair.
And we got a couple of questions, apparently.
Okay, John, and then Carrie?
Is Supervisor Brown or Commissioner Brown the current vice chair?
Yes.
I would nominate Jerry Ward to be chair and Carrie Brown to be vice chair.
I do have a question. Mr. Ward has sat as our treasurer as well. Would you want to include that?
Absolutely, if he's willing.
I was going to ask for volunteers, but
You're going to do it anyway.
I'll do it anyway.
Just like I read the report.
That's right. I'm hoping you read them. Okay, I guess there needs to be a second.
I will second.
I think the nominations need to be closed. I'm just looking at our policies and procedures, so.
I apologize. I was not prepared for that. So we'll close the nominations now and do a roll call.
Yes, please.
Oh, that's me. Sorry. I'm all excited about it. Commissioner McNerlin. Commissioner Doble.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Orth.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you for the confidence in me to do another year's worth. Thank you. Gary?
So now that you're chair, I would like to nominate Commissioner Doble to the executive committee to join the chair and vice chair.
Well, technically, the chair elects the committees, but
Oh,
I was going to
okay.
go ahead and put Mr. Doble on as the executive committee.
I'd be happy to do it.
Teresa, I like your hair.
Thank you. Nothing against Commissioner Doble, but I'd like to see maybe Mr. Orth on the executive committee. I don't think we've had district representation on the executive committee in quite a while, and I'd like to see the district represented on that committee, and I'd like to see Mr. Orth take that place. So.
Is there any other comments? John?
I think it's the chair's prerogative,
Right.
and we have a number of, anyone could serve. But
Of course, but no, I'm just giving my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'd like to continue the executive committee. We've done some good work this last year. We still have some unfinished business, and I'd like to continue that. The planning commission, or excuse me, the planning committee has made
Policies.
policies.
Procedures.
What about it?
That's what the name of it is.
Oh, okay, policies and procedures, sorry. How come it used to be planning committee, wasn't it? Can we change that? So therefore, we have, currently we have Tony, Teresa, and you, Dan. So it's really made up of one, I'd like to have one county supervisor on there. John, would you like to?
Well, Dan is currently serving, correct? I hope there's no reason why an alternate couldn't.
No, there's no reason.
Yeah.
I just want to know if you want, since you're up here, do you?
No, I think the committee's been doing good work. so
Okay.
I'm happy to have them keep doing it.
I would like to see Dan then continue. I'd like to have Tony continue on the planning. And Carol, would you be mind being on the planning or the policy and procedures?
Thank you.
Okay. And I guess we have the treasurer's position. Me. Okay, are we done with that? Does that pretty much cover it? Beth, you got the,
Yeah.
Thank you.
all right, we'll move to item 4, consent calendar. The following consent items are expected to be
We
routine.
have 3A.
3A. 3A is already
For A
done.
and for B.
Well, I mean, we haven't had the oath of office, if that's considered.
There's nobody
necessary.
that's,
They haven't met.
they haven't met.
Oh, okay.
Kevin said they
so
haven't
we're
met.
just deferring that, okay.
Yeah. And these special districts
That's
aren't
fine.
due until the 15th. Okay. Anyone want to pull?
I'd like to pull the minutes only because I can't vote on them because I wasn't here.
Okay. Anything else? Any,
I do on B, but where are we?
A or B? Do you have, go ahead and want to pull B?
Well,
You don't necessarily have to pull A. You can.
I
just-
have comment, and it said $10. It should have said Millview instead of Willow. That the refund,
Yes, thanks for catching that. I caught that after it was published, but the check is made out correctly. But thank you for the note.
Oh, by the way, here's the check.
and then I didn't get the opportunity to go back to Ukiah Valley Conference Center and the differences.
For the rent?
Yeah. Can we have an update?
Yeah, I'll have an update here in a second.
Okay.
Is the A87 cost only going to be $123? Are you aware of it? It'd be different.
That is the total.
Wow, that's great. We usually spend about $1,000. Sorry, county. With regard to the rental agreement, I've met with Carrie Randall twice. I believe we have the thing done. We did get a 3-year lease agreement. It is CPI based on the San Francisco Bay Area rate, unfortunately, but the rent will go from $404 to $415. And we'll at least have some way to predict what our rent will be for next year too, based on that CPI. It was supposed to be in the office Thursday, according to Beth. I talked to Kerry Randall Saturday night, and he said it was already submitted, and I'm surprised we didn't receive it. But I'll follow up today or tomorrow, and we'll have that on the agenda for next month to ratify it. So from 404 to 415. The reason it's different this month, Carrie, is there's a $9 credit because we paid $424 last month.
Oh, okay.
All right, any other questions on claims? I will entertain a motion, please, to accept.
I'll move approval of the January 8th minutes and
Second.
Get a second? Okay. We'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
How does that work? Do I
Abstain.
abstain?
Commissioner
Well,
Doble,
you could
Yes.
ask
Commissioner
them to
McNerlin.
abstain from the minutes
Yeah.
only.
Would you like me to note that you're abstaining from the minutes portion
Yes.
only? Thank you.
Did you ask for all the commissioners' approval?
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, yes. All right, item number 5, public hearing items. There are no public hearings this month. And then, before we go on to workshop items, I just wanted to make a note that we will have a closed session today on the evaluation of our executive officer. Our attorney would like to be present by phone. He can meet up to 11:30. So I think if we can, I'd like to do a workshop. Where are you folks from? Piercy? Fire Protection District. Pardon? Piercy? Okay. If the commission doesn't mind, I'd like to do the workshop for Piercy first, so these people can move on before we go into closed session. I think we should have plenty of time to meet with our attorney at that closed session. So saying, if that's approval, with your approval, I'd like to move on to workshop item 6C. All right, we'll bring it back to you, Emma.
Thank you. So this is a workshop item for the draft Piercy Fire Protection District Sphere of Influence update. We're requesting that we receive comments and any staff direction before we prepare the draft for public hearing. Piercy Fire Protection District was formed in 1968 and has a boundary of approximately 6.8 square miles. And through mutual aid services and dispatch service calls serves approximately 100 square miles. The district is the northernmost fire district. It is adjacent to between the Leggett Valley Fire Protection District and the Garberville Fire Protection District sphere of influence, and does go up to the Mendocino-Humboldt County line. Their district is mostly situated around Highway 101, and most of their service calls are related to highway accidents, although they do provide a full range of firefighting protection services. The district's sphere of influence is coterminous with the district boundary and was established in 1993, along with other special districts for fire service in the county. And staff is not recommending a modification to the sphere of influence, nor has the district requested one. And we do have folks here from the Piercy Fire Protection District to answer any questions as well.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody who would like to address the commission on the item? Come up to the podium and state your name for the record, please. Right there.
So I'm Jeffrey Hedin, a resident of Piercy and a resident within the district itself. And we have the sense that somewhere in the communication, some information has gotten lost or has been miscommunicated, and we would like to get some clarification of the importance of sphere of influence. Since most of the people who consider themselves to be serviced by the Piercy Volunteer Fire Department live outside the district, but very much adjacent to it. And we'd like to find out just exactly what it means to have the sphere of influence limited to the actual district versus having the sphere of influence expanded out to include the people to whom we are actively providing service, in particular since we occasionally get a call from an insurance company wishing us to confirm that such and such a person is living within so many miles of the fire station, the firehouse. And then there are certain details about our water sources and the condition of the building, et cetera, that we think might have to be clarified before we go too far with the sphere of influence discussion.
Okay. Well, Uma, would you like to tackle the first question? that Jeffrey came up with?
Sure. The district boundary was established back in 1968, and according to our records, has not changed since that time. A sphere of influence is the area that the district and LAFCo anticipates that the district will serve in the next 5 to 20 years. Fire districts are a little tricky in that services do occur outside the boundaries based on mutual aid agreements, on the dispatching that happens with CAL FIRE. But because the sphere of influence established and mapped is also a reflection of what the district can handle and manage as far as their finances, their location of their fire stations, their response times. I hope that helps.
It sort of helps. I don't know quite what the distinction is being made about what we're able to handle. And if that makes any difference in terms of funding for the department, et cetera. Because I think if you look at our response records over the past 20 years when I've been involved with the department, that most of our responses to fire calls and emergencies inside the population are actually outside the district. And we've had no trouble managing to respond to those things unless we've been limited by an earthquake-triggered landslide or an extreme weather event where the roads become impassable. But that's not been a district's issue. It's really been a county issue to maintain the roads where they are county roads, or Caltrans where they are Caltrans, and then the private ownership. And what we don't really understand is, would it be advantageous to the department to have the sphere of influence expanded in terms of our financial situation, our capacity to receive grants, et cetera. We haven't quite got a full grasp on what it means to have accepted responsibility and to receive an awful lot of our donations from the community that surrounds Piercy, is part of the Piercy Postal District, consider themselves to be Piercy residents, even though they're outside a district that was drawn up officially many years ago when Piercy was basically a mill town and had 3 active lumber mills operating, 2 of them 3 shifts a day, and the population was clustered very close to the mills. And since the breakup of the ranches and the timber ownership, the population has spread out into the hills and up the old haul roads, et cetera, in the area. And it's actually difficult for us to come up with commissioners because the majority of the people are living outside the district. And we've had discussions about having a plebiscite to see if we could expand the district by vote, et cetera. And the cost of running an election has always felt to be not worth the return that would come from an expansion of the district, unless we also could convince the people living in the area that they should support a capacity for us to tax the residences in the district, which we doubt would pass, especially with the current issues coming up over legalization of marijuana, et cetera, that there's enough turmoil in the district that we've said, we better wait until things settle out before we try to run an election to expand the district. So could you help us with understanding what sphere of influence really means in terms of the description of the fire department, the district, et cetera, in terms of things like distribution of funds from the county, et cetera, does it really make any difference? Or is sphere of influence just simply a sense that the supervisors and you commissioners need to know in order to have a feeling of who's where and what is there?
Well, we'll give you some more information here, I'm sure. John, you want to start? And then Tony?
Thank you. Well, I think in part you're raising legal questions, and it might be an appropriate question to direct to our attorney. What are the implications of having lands included within an SOI in terms of what responsibility, if any, does that confer on the district? It does, because right now, my understanding, you're only by law required to respond to areas within the district. And so that might provide some sort of shield for liability. In practice, as we know, you are dispatched and you respond, and
yes,
you've been doing that and you're going to keep doing it. You're not guaranteed any money from it. And one question you had, including you in the SOI, will not provide additional funding either.
Okay.
But the implication, to me, the main implication of if land is within your sphere of influence, it is expected that the district would expand into that area within some reasonable time frame, you know, like within 5 to 20 years or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And that is one of the problems of the district, is you're a little postage stamp and you serve a much larger area. So in many ways, it probably would be in the district's interest to expand. But I hear you saying you're not ready to take that step yet either.
That's absolutely true. We could get ready with a matter of making it an agenda item for the next commission meeting and push the vote for 2 commission meetings out. But it's something we've been discussing and we're aware of. Usually it comes up for the good of the district point on our agenda. It's never been a formal agenda item yet.
And a follow-up, if I may, it would be good to know what is the will of the district, because right now we're being told, we're being told that you're okay with the existing SOI. I think I read that line in here. So if that's not true, your board needs to tell us.
Uh-huh. And within what period of time do we need to make that? Because the one other question that I asked, or wanted to ask, haven't gotten to yet, is that some of the information that is on the current analysis is out of date, and we feel that that in some way we should make sure it gets updated. And is there a time frame for that?
We are trying to get the draft sphere of influence update document to public hearing in April, and that would be for all of the fire districts, or most of the fire districts in Mendocino County. We would do them all together. I would be happy to meet with district staff, though, and go over this with a fine-tooth comb and make sure it's correct.
Okay. And let me address Larry and Judith to make sure that I haven't left anything out that we needed to make sure about.
Jeffrey, we got some questions here too. Tony and then Teresa.
Yes, Jeffrey, you've made some very important statements here today. Piercy is on our watch list because you are economically challenged, but you've made some important statements. You've talked about the 5-mile radius of your fire station, which is important for, it means coverage can be granted to residents within that 5-mile radius under current ISO standards for the insurance companies. That's become a critical issue, especially with the wildfires throughout California. And we know insurance companies are disallowing fire insurance to residents who do not meet certain standards, like the 5-mile radius for response. Also, under LAFCo regulations, right now you are a corridor district, meaning that basically the ISO was put in place in 1993 was basically a corridor resolve, meaning it was looking at the main road that you service and just so much distance from that road. So I think you are, in a sense, presenting us with enough information. The fact that your directors are going to be discussing this, looking at holding an election. These are the types of resolve you can move forward. You can actually do a dual election where you do ask for an expansion of the district and also ask for contribution by those residents at the same time, and make one, the contribution is required before you actually will then allow that to happen. In other words, if they say no to the contribution portion of the election, you don't have to expand the district because they said no. So you can predicate yay votes on both matters to resolve and actually then raise some funds for having done so. I think these are critical questions, and maybe we need to pull you out and do some extra work with your fire district because it does seem like you're moving to expand somewhat, and that your current ISO might not reflect that because of the 5-mile radius of the fire house. And I think these are important questions for your district, and we need to discuss them further. That's why this workshop is held, for you to come up here and kind of raise these issues with us and make us aware that you might be moving in a direction that we need to pay attention to.
Teresa?
Yeah, he covered what I was going to say, yeah, and just encourage you to get with Beth and Uma, and they could help you describing the process of maybe expanding the district. And I do believe you get some tax revenues from your district, so you expand that district a little bit, and there'd be a slight increase in your revenues there. I'm not sure how much. But anyway, just encourage you to talk to these two, and they'll help you a lot.
The only thing I could add is that we do these SOIs, severe influences, every 5 years too, the MSR and the SOI. So if we don't get something done today or by April, at least we can be looking at this in the near future. And that doesn't mean that we have to wait 5 years. If you have something in a year or two, we could bring this back to the commission and expand your SOI at that point too. So, but it sounds like you've got some issues to go back with your board and discuss. And as Uma just said, she'll be more than happy to meet with your staff and figure out what needs to be done. Yes, Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do have a question. It does not have to do with the SOI, but it has to do with the state code. So I need to ask you, do you run your checks through the auditor's office, or do you do your own?
I think we do.
And collection.
Let me check with Larry. I'm not exactly sure.
Collection
we
of revenue?
do both.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I have a suggestion, and when we get to that, it's in state code and something that all the cemetery districts were looking at that may be helpful to very small fire departments about having to do an audit every year and replace that. There's a process to go through. And instead of doing an audit every year, you can go through a process with the Board of Supervisors and the auditor to do a financial review and then an audit periodically, and it could be 3 years or 5 years. And where we found the cemetery districts were having a very tough time financially, especially the really small ones, financially handling that. I see this with the fire departments, and it might be helpful to go to the Fire Chiefs Association and then look at all of you, all the departments as a whole, to see how many would qualify under that and have a process, and maybe all of you group together, whether it's a 3-year or 5-year, to have one CPA do it for all of you, which may be much cheaper. So, and not as costly as what it normally costs when you're on your own. So that's my idea of trying to help fire departments.
We're going to be going through the workshop document here, and I'm sure there'll be some other things that we'd like for you to probably take back to your board as well with some of the issues that we've come up with within the document. John, you want to add to it?
Well, I actually have a couple questions.
Okay.
And one of them, it makes reference on page 50 of 61 in our packet, right under the table showing the financials, that the district also receives approximately $25,000 to $30,000 from the Piercy Volunteer Fire Department fundraising activities each year, but I can't see where that would show up on the revenue shown in the chart. So is that statement accurate that you get that much in fundraising, or does that combine fundraising, donations? What?
Well, that is one of the inaccuracies that raised a flag for us.
Okay.
Basically, that number reflects how much money is, generally speaking, in the bank account that the volunteer fire department maintains on its own. Each year, the events that they cover and sponsor as a volunteer activity produces something more in the range of $8,000 to $10,000 a year. And somehow in the communications, it came to appear that instead of us clarifying that their bank account tends to hover in that range, because then they turn around and donate to the district as we need something like a new set of tires on one of the trucks or whatever. And that's, you know, something
Right.
we figured we better get clear with LAFCo before April deadline was hit.
Well, this is kind of interesting in that the district exists as one entity and maintains its own bank account and funding. The volunteer fire department, which I assume is the same one overseen by the district, maintains its own bank account, does separate fundraising, and decides to pay certain costs. So that relationship, I think, should be explained in the document at a minimum, so we're clear what's going on here, because that's a big ambiguity right now, I think.
Jerry? And then Tony?
When you say the fire department, you're actually talking about the Firefighters Association or something like that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
the Piercy Volunteer Fire Department was established long before the Piercy Fire District was. It was an ongoing entity, and once the district was formed, ownership of the vehicles, et cetera, passed to the district. But the institutional memory, et cetera, of the volunteer fire department remained.
And the bank account.
Yes, I mean, and it was all there. It was set up, and rather than establish an entity that would be the Friends of the Piercy Fire
You just kept that
Protection
name.
District, we just allowed them to continue functioning in that that form. So
And that's fairly common in a lot of fire departments where you have your association or your
That was going to be my comment,
Tony.
is I think all fire districts have a fire association of the volunteers, and they do basically barbecues, spaghetti feeds, and then they choose to donate some funds for critical equipment that's not in the general budget of the fire departments, like turnout boots or tires for the truck, depending on the size of the department.
John?
Well, we need to, I think, know what are the formal names. You know, we have the name for the district. We kind of need what's the formal name for this other organization, but it sounds like it sounds like the original volunteer fire department continued basically without any change. And I was going to ask about the formation of the district in 1968, because I'm well aware you had a fire department before then, because I went to your fundraiser in 1964.
You're showing your age there.
But, so I do think we need to at least record what the practice is, because I don't think it's common to have an association. I don't think it's common to have the volunteer fire department and the district as somewhat separate entities.
And I do think it's legitimate to add a question to all our fire department ISO, or I mean MSRs, about associations and their activity in support of each department.
Okay.
It is a gap, I think, that we haven't asked.
Well, and I would just add that it lets the taxpayers know that, hey, we have this support group here. It's not the folks you're paying the taxes to. They're an augmentation, and they help us out, and they're who you could donate, you know, because I'm assuming they're probably a 501 or something similar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Thank you. So part of what I'm seeing has happened here is in 2016 there was a municipal services review of your agency, and at that time that would be the time where these type of issues are discussed, accuracies about finances, how you operate, whether you want to expand or have capacity to expand your boundary would have occurred. And we're in the sphere of influence phase, which is the second half of that process. And the sphere of influence document is actually built on the municipal service review document. And so it seems to me that we need to look at going back to the municipal service review document and answer these questions there, and then come back with the sphere of influence update. It's almost like and I don't know where that fits within our work plan. Obviously, it was done 2 years ago, and we're finishing out that first step, and then I would expect in 3 years there'd be another municipal services review. So what I would suggest is meet with our staff, talk to them about your schedule. You have a few years now to actually start putting together the pieces to line yourself up for a new municipal services review, and also go out to the community and explain what you might be intending to do. So this sphere of influence document today, or when it comes back, doesn't necessarily have to reflect your future intentions now, but reflect what was in the municipal services review of 2016. But there's still time to go to start the process that you're bringing forward between now and when the next municipal services review happens. Does that make sense?
Sort of. What I don't quite understand is whether it makes any difference to you guys now to clarify some of these informational errors that have occurred in that process of 2016.
Right. Well, and it may have just been a communication issue. You know, we oftentimes reach out to the districts to get the information from them, which goes into the report. So it's possible that that just didn't occur effectively.
I have a feeling that some document was either lost by us or lost in the mail or whatever, that the numbers aren't, a perfect reflection of the financial situation that we are in, et cetera.
Those are good points, Kevin. I think that we need to move on, though, with what we have now, and then we can, as you suggested, they can come back and we could update the MSR as well as the SOI. But to put this off and not get them all done, we've already approved an MSR with possibly inaccurate information. So, but I think that's a good idea to bring it back. It doesn't have to be years. It could be a year from now, or when they're ready. But we need to move forward. Carol?
I have strong feelings about writing a document that is definitely inaccurate. Obviously we can't have a new SOI because they haven't taken those actions yet. But I really think that if we have misinformation in our document, it's really behooves us to correct it, because those documents are used by other agencies, and that information should be as correct as we possibly can get it.
Well, it's 2 years old, so there are going to be inaccuracies a week after we approve them because of updated information. So this is a moving target, John.
Well, first, I thank Commissioner Doble for bringing us back to, we're actually on the SOI right now, because a lot of the issues we're discussing really are MSR issues.
Right.
And yet I also agree, things that we now know are absolutely inaccurate, like the reference to the 25 to 30,000 annually from the volunteer department. That clear factual error could be corrected, but in terms of really delving into the relationship between the volunteers and the district, probably we just make a notation so that that's flagged to be reviewed at the next MSR. And to me, this really underscores what we've previously decided, that in the future, with limited exceptions, we're going to do the MSR and the SOI at the same time.
Together.
Yeah.
So we're not rewriting the MSR when we do the SOI, and
Good point.
we keep plowing the same ground. It's a lot more work for staff in addition to everything else. There is one really important issue, though, that I think that based on the MSR determinations, we may not be in sync with the intentions of the district and certainly not the practice. So the district is 6.8 miles by the district boundary. Your service area is more like 100 square miles, and it sounds like many of the people living in that area absolutely feel that they rely on the department, they contribute to it, support it. So it's kind of a functional whole, even though these areas are not within the district or even the SOI. But on the MSR determination updates on page 50 of 61, number 5, it says the district is marginally capable of providing services within the district boundary and is in no position to provide services outside the district boundary. Well, in fact, you're responding, and at least sounds like 50 highway medical emergencies a year. You're going to be the first people on the scene. Accurate so far?
Generally speaking, yes.
But I mean, you would not, well, let me go on. So we get to number 13 on the next page. Service priorities should be given to properties and residents within the district boundary. Given the limited resources available to the district, services to the so-called 100 square mile service area are no longer viable. These areas should be put on notice that Piercy Fire Protection District will no longer respond to these areas. I don't think that'd work very well.
It would not.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Kevin.
I would also say that the reason it's important in the municipal service review to really discuss who you're serving and why is because you have taxpayers inside your district boundary right now that are helping fund the service. And the service is being provided to folks outside that boundary who are not paying for that service, essentially. And you want to make sure that you're careful that the district ratepayers aren't subsidizing those services. Because, or it needs to be understood that that's happening. And for us, we would, if we were to know about this during the municipal service review, we would likely discuss some sort of determination that would recommend that you actually expand your district boundary to encompass those services and ask that you set a plan forward to actually do that. So we're kind of having this discussion after the fact, but that is something that you want to consider about who pays for the services and who's actually getting the services. Those are important components of the finances of the operation.
Uma, who did the MSR? Were you the EO on that, or was that George? Plan West. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. We went through a public hearing on the MSR, and obviously none of this came before us. So I apologize for that if you didn't get the information, but
Yeah, the ball may have been dropped on our side as well, or
yeah, we had a lot of non-contact with a lot of the districts, so we've had to come up with what we have without talking to specific people. So
yeah.
but fortunately, you're here today, and we're going to start correcting the record.
Point, yeah, what we'd like to do is, to push the metaphor a little bit, is if we can pick the ball up here and get at least the numbers straight. If this is the timely moment for that, or if, as Mr. Doble suggested, the timely move is with the next. I've forgotten the acronyms.
MSR, Municipal Service
MSR.
Review.
Then we'll prepare accordingly. But we're certainly prepared to straighten things out, on the level of just let's get the numbers right expeditiously.
Well, it's encouraging to me to have you up here saying this, because we haven't had that input in the past from other districts. We're more than happy to correct the record. Tony?
I know in November we had one of our largest public meetings. And it was all about fire issues, emergency evacuation issues. Clearly the public is a little more riled up and we're certainly in dry conditions now.
Yes.
I certainly wouldn't expect you not to perform and move forward, and we will need to move with you if you wish to start to expand and go to an election process. We will be here to help you. In that process, we can update an MSR, we can update an SOI as you move forward in that process, and that's something staff can talk to you about.
Okay, there's I think some other particulars within the document. I'm sure maybe John has some. I have a few that I think you need to be aware of too, that need to go back to your board. First of all, it states in here that you haven't had an audit in several years. Is that, we need to see some change to that. I think you are required to have an audit, and I think Carrie mentioned it, not possibly every 5 years now, I think with the new legislation. We would recommend that you maybe get a website, if you can, to become more transparent with your meetings and what's going on, especially with what we're discussing today. I've noticed some of the out-of-service areas that you are servicing, like Richardson Grove. That's not even in our county.
Yes.
Bell Springs Road, I understand Laytonville also services the Bell Springs area, it says in there. So I think there needs to be some coordination there with the out-of-service.
Yeah. Actually, that one is fairly well coordinated.
Okay.
That we all respond to any calls that come up from Howard Forest. Good. And basically, to get to Bell Springs Road, we either have to cut the gate on Red Mountain Road and then ford School Section Creek, or we drive through Leggett. And so far, we have always chosen, in consultation basically with Howard Forest, to follow up both Laytonville and Leggett up Bell Springs Road. But we back them up on all of those calls.
Okay, good. The other item in here was that your building, your fire department building, is in poor condition and possibly needs to be replaced. At least it says in the document. You might, we might need to see some capital. How are you going to come up with the capital to make the improvements for that? And then having water tendered in certain areas like some of the other fire departments have, so you're not pulling it out of a swimming pool or something like that. Anyway, those are the questions that within the document that I've read, and there's a few more, I'm sure, that need to be probably discussed and then brought back as well, how you're going to deal with those things.
All right.
And that's the importance of the SOI and the MSR, is to bring these things to the district, and so that we can come back with a better district that serves the public. Anybody
Yeah.
else that need to add? John, did you have some issues with regard to the document?
No, I just do think that based on the discussion, and it's kind of comports with what I think I already knew, despite the MSR determinations in here, I think we should have language clarifying that, unless we hear differently, that while the district does serve areas outside of its boundaries, that's actually completely consistent with the way the district is operating, and it's tied into your financing too, is what I'm gathering. That although there's no tax revenue coming from areas outside the district, there are significant contributions from people who are in that area who rely on the district. So I think we need to clarify, despite you're serving these areas outside the district, I believe your position is it would further compromise the ability of the district to exist and provide service to anyone if you declared that you weren't serving those areas. Is that?
We certainly believe that that's the case.
So I think the SOI update is a chance to clarify that the MSR determinations notwithstanding, we don't recommend that they discontinue serving the adjacent areas that are currently in your service area and you are currently dispatched to.
They can hear me.
Carol?
On page 46 at the bottom, it says out of service areas. It says the district does not maintain contracts with individual property owners to provide services outside the boundary. The district boundary is area. It seems to me that if Piercy Fire Department is actually serving those people outside the boundary, maybe for insurance purposes and other kinds of things, actually having contracts with some of those homeowners or some of those areas would make really good sense for them, and in a sense make sure that they are paid for the services they're
Right.
giving.
I think that's what Tony was bringing up earlier about the election of compensation
Well,
as well.
it seems
as-
to me, would that have to be an election process, or is there any other way they can go about that?
John, do-
Right now, it would be an individual property owner contracts with the district. Anderson Valley does this on a number of areas adjacent to their district where they provide the service. They do have some property owners are happy to have a formal arrangement. So the same thing could be done here, but the constraint is where's the administrative staff to take care of all of this? But I kind of think that's we're getting back to an MSR issue also.
It just seems to me that for homeowners who have to face insurance charges in the current California fire situation, it would behoove them to go to great lengths to have some kind of contract with a fire district to make sure that their
I'm
house
not
is covered.
disagreeing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me very interesting.
Well, I think, Uma, you can discuss that with them when you do meet them and come up with some answers for them, how they can proceed. Tony?
And I would recommend that when you can, if you would send a member to the Mendocino Fire District Association, because we discussed many of the issues you brought up today on an ongoing basis, and we are advocates for the fire districts that might help you in some of these program needs.
Thank you. And I have the sense that you guys need to move on. And, you know, issues like the status of the building and so forth could be discussed at length. And I think, you know, we probably should do this in a meeting with your staff. And I guess I just want to know, how do we arrange a date for a meeting with staff? I think that's the key question, so that we can get out of your agenda and let you proceed with business so that you
we're
can...
going to go into a closed session after this. Uma will be available after 5 minutes with the commission, and she can come out and set up a time with you. Would that be appropriate for you, Uma?
Sure.
Beth?
Or Beth could do it, our clerk.
Just take a 5-minute break before closed session.
Okay. You have a question?
I was just going to say this is a workshop where the public hearing will be next. And so you'll get the second bite at the apple.
Okay.
And it's in April.
And that would help staff, get corrections and answer further questions and also give you guidance in some of these processes that we've all talked about.
Thank you.
Again, I apologize, we weren't discussing this back in 16. But now that we see the face and the people from Piercy here, I'm sure we'll get this resolved to the benefit of all.
Well, thank you, and we apologize too. I mean, somewhere it feels clear to me that the communication just fizzled out, and I'm not so sure that most of the fault lies with LAFCo. It may very well have to do with something that we left off an agenda at some point in the past.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I have a couple questions for you, Uma. There was a discussion, there's about 1/4 mile between Laytonville and Piercy's area that's not within either district. Is there some way of getting that within? I mean, it's 101, so what happens? I know somebody will service it, but looking at the fire map of all the fire districts, it shows it being fully covered on 101.
There are a couple of gaps that we identified, and we had County GIS prepare a map of Piercy, Leggett Valley, and Long Valley fire districts, and sent that out to the districts for some input about who serves those areas. Unfortunately, we didn't get any response, and so the commission's direction was to kind of move things along, and we identified those areas for study in the next MSR SOI update.
Okay. Well, Piercy sounds like they want to expand. Maybe we can throw in that 1/4 mile.
Yeah, our maps also show us as being coterminous on 101 with Leggett Valley Fire Protection District.
Okay, and then I was a little bit surprised about the median household income being 114,000.
So were we.
That's pretty good compared to what we've seen in the rest of the county.
Yes, we certainly don't consider ourselves to be the Kentfield of Mendocino County.
I presume that's correct. It is correct. Unfortunately, it is a very imperfect number, I'm sure. We take the facts from the census data, and that's what they provided.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know if you're trying to get more money out of your people you serve. It might not be as tough as you think. Okay, any other questions for Piercy? John?
Well, I think just direction to staff, which I think it is, that the district and staff will consult as to obvious inaccuracies in the document, and staff will bring forward appropriate corrections. We hope to hear from the district as to whether they're comfortable staying with the status quo this time around, or are they requesting an increase in the SOI this time around. And then I think we're also supportive of the MSR determinations 5 and 13 notwithstanding. We do not recommend discontinuing service to the adjacent service area.
Okay. And that
and then it would be set for hearing when the other SOI updates are ready.
Right. I believe that's in April.
Correct.
Okay. All right, and then maybe we can get some answers to some of the questions I came up with too, or how you want to proceed on that, because I think that those are important.
Yes, and we do have water carrying capacity.
Good.
et cetera. So,
Well, compared to what we've seen in other departments, it's a little lacking, but maybe you're sufficient. Carrie, you have anything else?
Well, I just wondered if
Oh, is anybody else?
someone wanted to speak.
have we covered it?
I think everything's been covered, and we're delighted with the fact that we can have a meeting quite quickly. That's delightful. But I do want to add a postscript.
Can you come up to the podium for the?
Thank
I'm sorry.
For your
My name
name.
is Judith Castillo. I just wanted to add that we were very, very proud, and it always chokes me up, to send a three-man, one-woman crew, excuse me, to the Redwood Complex for 10 days.
Thank you.
Good.
They were just so happy to contribute. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it much.
And thank you for coming all the way down from Piercy for today. Good. John?
And one more item, maybe note in there that the relationship between the volunteers and the district needs to be clarified in the next MSR, rather than try to do it all here.
Carrie?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that since Commissioner McCowan hasn't been to one of your fundraisers since 1964, you might send him a special invitation for the newest upcoming.
I believe all your names have gone on the list.
Okay.
And I've always wondered if the Army recruiters ever made it back to Eureka.
We've certainly always sent Dan Jerde notice of all of our events, so we'll ask him to extend.
Good. Thank you. Have a safe trip back home.
Thank you.
Do you have the information, Beth, to get in contact with him? Okay.
We do.
All right, if you don't mind, we will adjourn for a closed session temporarily.
Do we know?
3-minute break before we do?
Sure, if you want to
Do
break.
we know where we're going?
No.
Carrie, do you know where we're going?
It's the room across the hall.
Okay, Beth made arrangements
She
for
did.
it?
She did.
Okay.
And we have access to a phone for our,
There is a phone back.
We did confirm that, yes.
all right, I've asked Uma to come in and talk for maybe a few minutes to give her background. She'll leave the room and then we'll do our evaluation.
Okay.
Thank you. Sure, 3 minutes.
Are you taking a 3-minute break?
Yeah. Back on mic, everybody here? Okay, we're back at 11:08 for the agenda items again, and we are back from closed session, and we completed the evaluation of our executive officer. So we'll move on to workshops 6A, Leggett Valley. Actually, could we go to 6B, Long Valley? They had more complete workshop that I liked. Can we go to 6B, Long Valley Fire Protection District, draft SOI?
Uh, 26, wait, you're going Long Valley?
Long Valley,
26 of 61.
yes. Uma, you want to give us a preamble?
Thank you. So this is workshop for the Long Valley Fire Protection District Sphere of Influence update. The Long Valley Fire Protection District was formed in 1955 and includes the communities of Laytonville and Branscombe. The district boundary is approximately 238 square miles. It is the governing agency for the Laytonville Volunteer Fire Department and Ambulance Department. They do provide multiple services, including structural fire protection, emergency medical and ambulance services, rescue and extrication, and first responder for hazmat incidents, fire prevention, and wildland fire protection as a secondary provider. They did, as we have been doing with all of the fire districts, we provided an administrative draft document to them approximately a month before this meeting, and we did not receive any feedback from the district on the administrative draft. The district sphere is coterminous with the district boundary and was established along with the other fire districts in 1993. They have not requested modification to their sphere of influence, and none is recommended by staff. As mentioned with the Piercy Piercy Fire Protection District, there was opportunity for them to provide input on a map that showed the three districts and to in an effort to coordinate any holes in service. We did not get any feedback on that. I think, and that's all I have for an introduction.
Okay, we'll begin with our commissioner analysis person, Mr. McGowan.
If he doesn't have something to do.
Let's start with Commissioner Brown.
Okay, Gary.
And actually, this is very minor, but on page 33 of 61, policy consistency analysis, there's just extra spaces. And then as I traveled through the document, when I got to page 36 of 61, I was looking at number 16 up towards the top of the page, and it says all three positions will be up for election in November 2018. So my comment or question is, this is 2018, what happened in 2017, or should it be 2018?
I'll have to verify that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make a couple of comments before John. It notes in here that the district has provided or reports annually an annual CPA financial audit. Can we get a copy of that in the document?
So a difficulty we've had in getting financial documents from, well, particularly these three districts, but we've also heard this from other fire districts, is the response is that information is public. Please ask our accountant, which when we ask the accountant says we can't provide that information, it's private.
Really?
So we haven't been able to get the actual documents yet, but we will ask again for the public draft.
Thought it was all public. The other question I had is on page 36 of 61, under 1.241 land uses. Talks about the unincorporated community of Branscombe. There's no longer a general store there. It's been closed for a while.
Has it?
Mm-hmm.
Last time I was there, it was open.
It looked close to me the last time I drove through there. I mean,
It's been a couple of years.
Actually, the whole Branscombe Mill was up for
Oh, yeah.
an auction, so. No, it's no longer.
Okay.
You
there.
could almost just strike that sentence and
Yes. Consist of one-room schoolhouse, I presume. I'm not sure where that's located. And then up in the determination, same page, 36, number 19, the district maintains a website where it posts information, documents, updates. Does this need to be done? Do they have all
they
their
have a
updates?
website. I was just on there.
Yeah, where you did, okay. I think that's all I had, John. You had some?
yes. So very minor, page 26 of 61, there's a reference to the ambulance department, and the full name, I think, is given
20
later.
what or what?
No, he's wrong number.
26
Oh,
of
you mean
61.
the introduction, okay.
Okay.
Under discussion, second full paragraph, there's a reference to the ambulance department, and I think it might be the Laytonville Volunteer Ambulance Department. That's the name that's used later on in the document, and so if that's accurate, we should use it on the first use. There's one question that relates to all three of these, and on this document, it's page 32 of 33, where starting on this one, top of page 32, 1.2.2.4, the consistency with LAFCo policies. That's all boilerplate right down to the last couple of sentences. And so I think rather than have this block appear in each document, maybe it would just appear once in the consolidated document. And then if there were specific discussions of any of these points, then that would be included in the individual SOI updates. And so the relevant sentence here perhaps is towards the end on page 33 of 61, just above the MSR updates, where it says the coterminous SOI is appropriate given the district's current operating level. Maintaining the existing district SOI is consistent with Mendocino LAFCo policies. And again, both Piercy and Leggett, it's a similar situation where the one relevant sentence is at the end of that section, and where that statement could be moved to, I think, would be to 1.2.2.3, where it could be incorporated into the paragraph referring to the proposed SOI changes, of which there are none, and this statement just reinforces why no change is appropriate. So.
Okay. Gary?
So as a matter of debate, and I'll have to say I thought the same thing, but if I'm a constituent of Piercy or Leggett or Long Valley, or a part of the department, I wouldn't think to read the introduction. I would go through the complete document for the one I was interested in. And it does seem repetitious, but on the other hand, I went, leave it in. So that was my feeling, so that anyone that reads this understands the consistency, and I don't think they go back and read the other two, and maybe not the introduction.
But if they don't read any of this, when they're done with the process, they'll know as much about the district as they did before. I mean, it's just boilerplate.
I understand, but it's just a matter of debate, and
Right.
you and I are having it, and we've got colleagues that get to make the decision.
Yeah, and I'm just in favor of load the boilerplate into the introduction, and where it's relevant, we would refer back to it. And so, again, that's my input on that. and I think it holds true probably for all of these, but, and we might ask staff, do they have a preference?
Well, it was our intent to include it in the individual SOI update documents because that's what each district was getting their own to review. And then when we pull it all together, our intent was to pull out the boilerplate into the introduction and then just include the specific analysis as you suggested in the text. I appreciate the input though from Commissioner Brown as well, and we're happy to do it either way.
What do you prefer?
I guess I would prefer to pull out the boilerplate and just refer back to it. We can put a note in each section that says, please see section such and such for a description of these sphere of influence policies.
Because otherwise, if the issue doesn't come into play, then you're just reading through stuff. If you want to learn about the district, you're not getting anything.
Kevin?
Oh, I just wanted to, I'm not sure if we're done discussing that particular topic, so I don't want to get off track. I wanted to go to the map.
Well,
So I had some comments on the map.
let's finalize this. Carrie, do you want to?
Well, then, so my response back is, then do it that way, instead of including it in the workshop copy. It should be, the workshop copy should be just exactly what, you know, after we go over it, corrections made. Then it shouldn't be included in here. It should be included in the introduction, if that's the way the document's going to come forward when we actually do the public hearing. So that's my only comment. Totally understand. Looks good.
And it would still retain all of the district-specific comments, so.
Okay.
Okay, we go with that. All right, Kevin, we'll move on.
Just on, if you turn to the map page, it's actually 39 of 61. There's a couple of labeling things I wanted to point out. One, right above the label of Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District, there's a label that I think is just needs to be turned off. It says Pacific Ocean. And then just on some of the labeling that I see on the roads, it almost looks like something got shifted. So I would maybe ask the GIS person to go back and double check that something just didn't get shifted, because the labels seem to be sort of just kind of slapped on there. And I think if they're going to be labeling the streets, they should at least be a little bit more in line with where the street is.
Okay.
That's it.
Tony? Then Carrie?
My question is,
No.
Westport Volunteer Fire District, we don't give them an SOI,
Correct.
and yet they're the adjacent to of this district. Do they not respond up to that point? Should they be mentioned anyway, that they exist westerly of this district?
I think in the text we do mention that. We did not include them on the map. This question came up when we were meeting with the Elk County CSD, and Mr. McMillan pointed out that volunteer fire departments are not under the purview of LAFCo.
Right.
So there was some confusion about whether or not to include them in any of the documentation that LAFCo does. They were included in the MSR as, I think they had a profile in the MSR.
Right.
And we have a map that has been done by county GIS, but because we don't have anything to do with their boundaries, we opted to leave it off. However, if the commission feels that we should include that, we can.
A gray area?
We could delineate it separately, maybe.
Is that, well, it's in the document, it's in the written part. Is that good enough?
Yes, that would be fine for now. I understand there are issues in showing it on a map at this point.
All right, any other comments? Jerry, when you went on their website, did you see their posted meetings and stuff? Because it says in the document that it has not been updated. I just wondered if they do update that more often than not. That was on my question before on the. And the other thing that I liked about the Long Valley was there was a lot more in the determinations versus Leggett and Piercy.
You know what, Jerry, I think this is an example of probably a run by the firefighters and not by the district. I think there's a lot of fire departments are doing that to avoid, I say Brown Act, but or something. The volunteers keep the fire or the website up.
The website up.
But yeah, there is nothing mentioned about a meeting here.
Okay. I just want to maybe mention that to them to keep, if they have a website, to keep it up current. That's really important. Okay. Carol?
I'm confused and worried about the difference between the volunteer fire district, the volunteer fire departments, and the actual districts. And I think that needs to be clarified for the general public as well. You know, when you look at a map and if you don't have everybody on it, you don't know where, what coverage there is for fire protection. And I think people are really paying attention to fire districts and fire protection. So I think we need to clarify the relationships and make sure that we show on any kind of mapping what we have jurisdiction over and what we don't, but that it's there. I mean, if you wanted to look at the picture as a whole, if we don't give them the picture as a whole, who will?
So you're suggesting that Westport be included but shaded in a different color?
Yeah, something like that. And also, up until today, I thought I knew a little bit about fire districts, but the whole idea of what Piercy brought in, which is the volunteer part versus the official part, I think that needs to be clarified in each of the districts. I'm a little confused about that. And I'm thinking if I'm confused, the general public will be really confused.
Well, I think that's what John brought up earlier, is that we need some more information on how that all works within
how that
SI.
works in each of the districts, because obviously it, you know, if one group does this and one group does that, and how does it coordinate with each other?
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think we might be mixing a couple of different issues here.
Yeah.
And one of them, which I think we've identified as an MSR update issue, is what's the relationship between the fire districts, and there may be an association, or the volunteer fire department may, although it's really part of the district, may be keeping their own set of books. So that's an MSR update issue within a district. And then the second issue is how to account for Westport on the map, and it's actually a fire company.
Yes.
I believe is
Right.
the formal
Yeah.
term. And one interesting sidelight to that, the Mendocino County Association of Fire Districts, in devising their formula of who would get funded by the county, included not only Westport, but they included Whale Gulch, which is neither a district or a company, but maybe a 501c3. And their rationale for including Whale Gulch was they are recognized by LAFCo.
Oops.
So this is something to maybe delve into, because if we're saying now that Westport Fire Company is not even within our purview, then where's Whale Gulch?
Mm-hmm.
And the one distinction I would make with Westport, although they're not a district, I think on some level, in this, you know, Uma, you might have the answer, or someone else, I think they, to some degree, operate under the umbrella of the Westport Water District and receive some portion of funding through the Westport Water District. So there's
A blending?
yeah, it's not formally a district, but it's tied in with the existing district up there, and I think receives funding through them. So maybe, you know, I think it's worth looking at exactly what is the relationship of the Westport Fire Company to that local district, and how should we account for them in this overall document.
Would you be interested in a different shading for the company versus a district?
If there is a formal area that they respond to, and I guess it would simply be a service area since they're not a district.
Correct.
And I think it far exceeds the boundaries of the water district.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, it should be, I think it should be shown on the map.
Right.
But shaded differently with a notation.
Because I think we all agreed at one point we wanted to see the final map of the county with all the fire districts and see which areas are not being served. Having Westport in there would help that.
And there were issues when there was an annexation to Fort Bragg Fire District. Westport was in the room, you know, making, hey, we respond here, and you're actually taking away some. So it's important, but also I would like to say that the Fire District Association no longer says recognized by LAFCo. We've come up with a different terminology. I'll try to get that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, any more comments on the Long Valley? Yeah, John.
There's a couple of instances, one on page 31, the bottom of the second full paragraph. It says, under an agreement with Coastal Valley EMS, the district continues to provide emergency medical transport services outside its boundary. And maybe it's just semantics. To me, emergency medical response services might be more appropriate. Transport has a specific meaning, I think.
Okay.
So if there's no objection, I would substitute response for transport, and it appears again on page 35 under item 7 of the determinations. There also, on page 31, it refers to this agreement with Coastal Valley, and it refers later in the document that the county does provide funding, which is what makes this possible. So I think this would be an appropriate place to include the statement that that this is funded by the county, and it's, I believe, $60,000 annually. And this is the third fiscal year that's being provided. So, you know, I think we would reference that county contribution there, as well as on page 30. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's another question. Where does the $60,000 from the county show up within the financial summary in terms of revenue, or does it? So an answer to that question.
Got that?
And
Yes.
also page 36. I'm assuming that Long Valley, the very top of the page is the continuation of item 14. I'm assuming that the Mendocino County Association of Fire Districts, that Long Valley is also a member agency there. And the correct term is Mendocino County Association of Fire Districts,
I believe so, yes.
as opposed to the Mendocino County Fire Chiefs Association. But so
Well, I think it
well, no, I think you still
No,
have the
they're
Chiefs
separate.
Association.
They're separate.
Oh,
Oh,
Well, they're
yes.
still separate.
Oh, yes.
Oh, and then I had a notation on number 16. I think this statement that is struck through is accurate, so I'm wondering why we would strike it. Because I think they all have been filled by appointment.
Okay.
And then the second part that was added, that's true too, but
So keep them both in. And rewrite it. Is that it? Okay. I still have some concerns about that audit report being private. I don't understand that. I think that's a public document each way. But if you could get somebody from the district to okay the CPA to give you a copy of it. According to determinations, they're doing an annual audit now, starting 15-16. So I don't understand why we can't get a copy of that. That's very important because they do have a lot of capital outlays that wouldn't be, I know from a budget standpoint, that's fine, but that's not really an expense, total expense, yeah.
I think it is to be posted on the state controller's website, audits. And actually audits are public documents. So maybe we need to file our own request, what is it, Public Records Act request.
I think that they would give that to you because
They should.
I mean, they made a small income, as they say, but they had $76,000 in capital outlays, which means they probably are a lot better shape than $1,500. So, from a net income standpoint.
Yep. I would check the state controller's website first because it is supposed to be there, and it is a public document coming from a district standpoint. And Public Records Information Act request could just be a simple email.
Okay.
You know, reference. You don't have to go to an attorney or anything.
Okay. The information that is in this table is from the controller's website, but because we didn't receive any financial information from the district, and the when we called the CPA, I think what he meant was that he could not give that to us without permission from the district because of the client.
Okay, so that's better.
But
So maybe we can get this Sue Carberry to request it. She's your contact person. So I think it's important we see this district's doing fairly well, but that we get consistency in the financial information is really important. Whether it's done every 5 years or 3 years with these reviews.
I just have a question because some of the comments I'm hearing sound like they're municipal service review comments. So are we getting back into that, or are we just talking about the sphere of influence?
Well, they are MSR determinations. They're labeling it as updates, but that's something we're going to not have to worry about in the future as we combine them.
Right.
But I guess the point would have been to include them in case there was something relevant to the SOI determination.
Well, wasn't this another MSR that was done a couple years ago that now we're doing the SOI for?
correct.
And a lot of this information that's in this body of this document is derived from that MSR.
Correct.
Well, we're learning from our mistakes. We'll
Just
have
saying.
MSRs and SOIs together in the future.
But what I'm saying is if we go in and change the sphere of influence, don't we have to go back and change the information in that municipal
Well,
service?
because it was
Fortunately, we're not
adopted.
changing the sphere of influence.
I mean, the MSR was adopted back because that's the knowledge we had back then. Where the SOIs, it's not, you know, she's just bringing forth what's in the MSRs. And
Right.
so it's kind of a tag you're in.
Hopefully we'll clean it up next time around.
Yeah.
Comment?
Carol?
I'm concerned that they didn't respond when we sent them a copy. I mean, in a sense, we're making a formal statement that this is true when we, and when we heard from Piercy how wrong theirs was, and we're kind of assuming that if we don't hear from them, it's true, but that's a big
Well,
assumption.
we've had that problem for a lot of these SOIs. Karen?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
many
Tony?
times, how I have viewed it, many times you've got community service districts that have the fire department, and then you have your volunteer fire department or your auxiliaries. And my point being, sometimes the protection district doesn't talk to the fire department. You know, there's not communication there, everybody's busy, but still, yeah, sometimes you just have to go there. Because I know Potter Valley Fire Department, the community service district, wouldn't necessarily be the ones to review the document on the fire department. But the information, because the mailbox goes to the community service district, all the mail, yeah, he never got the communication on it until I tackled him.
So it seems to me that we need to direct UMA to do both, to send it to both, and we need to make sure we have
Well,
the
sometimes,
addresses or the way in
sometimes
which
you
we
don't, have the addresses.
So
And
that's going to take a little bit of effort to get all that corrected, isn't it? And is that what we want our staff to do?
For the next round of
Or is that something
MSR.
for
Yes.
the board,
Yeah,
the
next round.
supervisor for that district to do?
Well, as we go through these, I hope they're going to get better and better. This is our first go-around, so I'm really looking forward to our second time around on MSRs and SOIs. Tony?
I'm going to jump up to Leggett for a moment.
I'd like to talk
Which is
about
page 21 of 61, and Uma got this right. It's under communities of interest. The small unserved area along U.S. Highway 101 corridor located between the district's northern boundary line and the Piercy Fire Protection District and the large unserved area along the State Highway 1 corridor located on the coast between the southwest boundary of the district and the Westport Volunteer Fire Company will be reevaluated for suitability of inclusion in the district SOI in the next MSR SOI update. And I think this also touches on Kevin's comment that, let's not go backwards, let's go forward.
Okay. So let's finish up Long Valley. Do we have any more comments on Long Valley before we move on to Leggett?
Well, to wrap up Tony's point, because it ties back to Piercy, that'd be the perfect statement to also include in the Piercy
Yes.
Document.
Mm-hmm. Yes. My last comment, and I'll shut up, is the out-of-service area of Bell Springs is now both in Laytonville and Long Valley and Piercy. Is it okay to have both? Or should one or the other take it?
Well, they have a fire company in Bell Springs.
I was just going to say that Bell Springs has a fire company.
Great.
And they're in neither district, so they do an instant mutual aid just to provide enough coverage.
Okay, well, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Well, I thought the explanation was Piercy responded as mutual aid.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a mutual aid situation.
It is mutual aid,
Okay.
and Commissioner McCowan's correct. They do, Piercy backs up Long Valley in that area generally.
So what about the Bell Springs Fire Department? Company, I mean,
Company.
excuse me. Do we have any information on
I don't
them?
know that they're even a company.
I have not heard of them. I don't know.
A bunch of guys with a truck.
That's basically true.
That's what I understand.
Yep.
I just thought
Yeah, I
Are
thought
they
were a
active?
company.
they,
Yeah, they are active.
They are active?
Yeah.
Maybe we ought to make a comment about that? In the-
I know somebody in Willits that's on their company, or I could reach out to them.
that would be good to find out.
And we
some
should
more.
note that Little Lake has a relationship with Ridgewood Ranch, which is a little more formalized, but that it is sort of an outreach to some of these communities just to add and get into a time of response. And I think that's what's happening in the Ridgewood Ranch
Ridgewood,
issue. It's a time of response issue, and Little Lake has helped thereby the Ridgewood volunteers with equipment and training and association.
Well, John, go ahead.
And Black Oak Ranch has a fire department, so I think we have to be careful how far down the rabbit hole do we really want to go.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they should be just recognized that they're there.
Well, how are we going to capture them all? There's so many situations where there's some level of fire capability maintained by a ranch or a community.
Maybe we
I
look at
think when we-
consolidations.
I think when we consolidate all these into one document, that there'll be a chapter mentioning this particular issue and listing some of these companies that exist out there in an informal fashion.
Especially if you write it.
You're here.
I would be happy to work with you on that, Commissioner Orth.
Okay.
All right, anything else on Long Valley Fire Protection District? We'll go on to Leggett. You want to give us a little preamble on that, please?
Okay, this is a workshop for the draft Leggett Valley Fire Protection District SOI update. The district was formed in 1974, and the boundary covers approximately 29 square miles. They do, excuse me, they do provide services through mutual aid agreements and dispatch service calls to approximately 145 square miles. They cover along the areas along Highway 101 and Highway 1. They do provide multiple services, including structural fire protection, emergency medical services, and hazardous materials incidents, as well as rescue and extrication, fire prevention, and wildland fire protection as a secondary provider. Most of their calls are medical response to motor vehicle accidents along the highway corridors. We did provide this to the administrative draft to the district and have not received input on the draft. Again, we did reach out for financial information and were directed to the county auditor controller and their CPA. We were not able to obtain that information before this document came to workshop. Their kind of interest on this one is that in 1993, or around that time, we have not been able to identify exactly when it was established, but the sphere was expanded an additional half mile on either side of the Highway 101 corridor. The district did, early in the process, did say that they felt that their SOI should be coterminous with their boundary, and we have recommended that that be the case, and so that would remove that half mile on either side. The first mention that we came across of that half mile was in the MSR process, but we weren't able to backtrack to when that happened.
Okay. Gary, you want to begin?
Sure, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On page 15 of 61, at the very top, it says mutual aid agreements with Mendocino County. Is that an EMS with Coastal Valley? I mean, what? I just don't understand that, and if you can't clarify it, let us find out. I'm not sure what the agreement is.
I believe that should be CAL FIRE.
Okay.
Thank you. I was looking for that for the last 10 minutes.
Okay. And then if you go further down, I think you just talked about the highway buffer sphere, so I can move forward on that. But if you go down to 1.2.2.3, and it would be the second paragraph, it says the areas of interest described above. So I'm assuming that is 1.2.2.2.
Correct.
And I don't know if we need to clarify that or not.
Okay.
And then going further, was looking at their financials, but I'll wait on that. But if you go to page 19 of 61, says reported that the main station at drive-through tree, but the has to be added between that and main. And then going down to item number 11, and that would be on 6 that I just talked about. But going down to item number 11, I'm not sure what CFPD stands for. I couldn't find it.
Cal Fire Protection District?
California Fire Protection District?
I don't know.
It's a guess.
I just couldn't go, I went through the document and I could not find an explanation of the
There
acronym.
is no protection district called
That-
Cal Fire
that-
Protection District.
Yeah, that came from the MSR, so we'll have to look back and check that.
And then going down, I was looking at one of the, let's see, the district, and this is under 13, the district should renew its efforts to identify more than one candidate for each board position so that voters within the district will be afforded a choice and an opportunity to vote. And the thought that went through my mind is when you have 300 residents, but the cost of an election or the cost of filing. I'm not sure with fire departments if each candidate has to pay a filing fee, collect signatures, you know. So I think about all that, and so I just put a big question mark there. Why? And then going forward, I think that is it. All right, that's it.
Anybody else? John, then Kevin.
So the issue of the SOI and what it is currently, there seems to be some ambiguity. On page 15 of 61, sphere of influence, it says the sphere of influence was established by LAFCo October 4th, 1993. Says it was expanded 1/2 mile either side of US Highway 101 corridor. That's not necessarily borne out by what's shown on the map. It looks like a skinny 1/2 mile in some areas, but the last paragraph in that sentence says that the district says that highway, it's called here a buffer sphere, was not actually established, and the district requests that their SOI be coterminous with their boundary. And it is recommended a coterminous sphere be established for the district. Then you get down to 1.2.2.3 at the bottom of the page. The district has confirmed the adequacy of their existing district boundary and SOI. And then the very bottom of the page, there are no proposed SOI changes for the Leggett Valley Fire Protection District. But when you get to page 20, very top of the page, SOI determinations, it's recommended that the commission modify the existing SOI for the Leggett Valley Fire District, which includes 1/2 mile either side of US Highway 101, to be coterminous with the district boundary. So it's either coterminous or it's not, and it either includes the 1/2 mile or it doesn't. So it may be the way that it's written up, but there needs to be a little editing there at a minimum.
We'll clarify that.
Well, you mentioned earlier, though, that 1/2 mile isn't included.
That's a different 1/2 mile.
Oh, it's a different one.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
a
okay.
different.
That 1/2 mile is the gap between.
Okay. All right.
And
else?
other than that, I had some pretty minor stuff on page 18. There's a reference below the financial charts that the district receives approximately $10,000 from the 501c3 Leggett Valley Volunteer Firefighters Association. And I'm not sure which line item that shows up for on revenue. So if that could be clarified with the district. And then, again, we get into the problems with having the SOI trail the MSR. When you look at item 6 on 19 of 61, the district reported the main station is currently being expanded. Remodeling began 4 years ago. That was probably 4 years ago from the time they gave us the info for the MSR. And then it says in 2015, the district will refurbish the bathroom facilities. So, you know, I'm not sure of the fix, but it's just the inherent difficulties of the SOI being done separately. And then also number 7 refers to the capital improvements, which has been completed through accrual of modest reserves. The budget doesn't show a reserve account.
Yeah,
it might just be included within the
No
fund
reserves.
balance.
Yeah.
Right.
And then one other really minor thing on 11, I'm assuming also that they're probably a member of the Mendocino County Association of Fire Districts. So that could be included in 11 if true. And I think that was it.
Kevin?
I don't mean to be
Redundant?
going back to this, but
Redundant?
again, it seems as though these are all great comments, but when you read this document, all of these financials and determinations are all referenced back to the MSR that we approved in
Except we've
2016.
updated the financials. This is new information that wasn't in the MSR.
That's not how I'm reading it, though. Uma, could you clarify for me how that?
So the financials, based on feedback from the commission earlier on some of these earlier SOI updates, we were asked to update the financials. So what we've done is gone to the state controller's website and pulled the financials from there because the districts have not provided that financial information at our request.
So this information wasn't in the MSR originally?
So this financial table on page 17 and 18 has been updated from the 2016 MSR.
I see, okay.
And then the MSR determinations, starting on 1.2.3.2, are taken directly from the 2016 MSR. And where it is obvious that there is an update or the district provides us with updated information, we have updated those with the strike through and the underlining.
Okay.
However, as with Long Valley, we haven't received any feedback from the district on these.
So we don't have an obligation to go back to that MSR. This would be updating that MSR basically by.
Well, it's just updating the determinations. And I mean, I cited one that is clearly dated. So it's like, it's probably 5 minutes to make a correction, but I don't think it's revising the MSR.
And this isn't the best way to do this too, Kevin. We should be doing this hand in hand with both documents at the same time.
Yeah, because it can be rather confusing.
It is.
It's confusing to me because I feel like we went through these MSRs and adopted them, and now we're looking at the SOIs for each one of these districts, and we're going back and changing things that we approved in the previous MSR. And I don't know what the mechanics of that are and what it all looks like when it all comes out at the end and they're all done. What does that look like? Are we going to have just a bunch of inconsistencies between the two? And I'm not sure how that plays out for what we're trying to accomplish.
Point taken. Gary?
Maybe just a little asterisk saying this. Just so that if someone is reading it, we just know it's updated and it's different.
Yeah, I mean, part of the issue is, for me, when I look at trying to understand what a community or a district is doing, I go to the MSR. I don't even look at the SOI document. Yeah. So the SOI document, in this case, we're actually updating the MSR. I'm not sure that would get picked up in the normal course of someone's review.
Well, all the comments are valid. We've identified how we're going to fix this going forward, but I will note that under the section financial information, it does clearly say that this info is updated, and it even gives the years for the info that was in the 2016 MSR, and then says this is updated to reflect the 3 most recent fiscal years available.
Yeah, I agree, but I disagree that a financial review by a CPA, this is to me a budget. You don't do a financial review on a budget. You do a financial review on a financial statement showing income and expenses coming up with a net income.
Well, again, but I think Kevin's point, we don't want to rewrite the MSR as it relates to this. We want to make sure we do have the accurate information when we do the MSR update.
I like the way the strikeout works and where you did get a response back from a district, and I think that keeps the districts involved to actually do an update, and that's just because we're doing a hybrid. We didn't do them together. So this will probably resolve in the future again as we change our mode. But I do think the strikeout, if we get input and they want to provide new information, we should accept it. We shouldn't, and I think the strikeout works because it shows the old language and the replacement. So.
And that is how it was done for Long Valley, and I would agree with Commissioner Orr's comments. If any changes to the MSR table, and it's labeled determination updates, and then maybe there could just be an asterisk, either say it in the heading or as an asterisk, that all changes are shown in strikeout and underline.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's clear what's been changed from the original MSR. I don't think it has to be a big involved reanalyzing everything.
It is stated directly, the sentence above the table for MSR determinations. Would you like it in the table itself?
Yeah, that's perfect. So
Okay.
it's there.
Does that work, Tony? Okay. Carol, I know you're itching.
That's okay. I was really interested in the list called determination updates. and I think the one that was not updated, which you mentioned, it is LVFPD reported that financial levels are not adequate to deliver services. This is not enough funding to accommodate an additional need for expansion of medical response services or additional personnel. You know, and it does say at the bottom of that chart that the source was LAFCo 216. And that's the kind of stuff that I particularly worry about when we talk about our fire districts. And that, so we go back and forth about other information with a great deal of accuracy. And it seems to me that's the, you know, the major thing is that how are these folks actually functioning? And some of the answer to that might be the difference between the fire volunteer budget and the district budget or something. But, you know, I mean, I keep saying it, but we have had a major fire disaster, and here we're looking at our fire districts, and unless we get a full picture of what's going on, you know, how are we to really tell our folks either you're reasonably safe or you're not safe at all, or how do you deal with the insurance issues? And it just makes it so complicated for people's lives. And scary.
Good point. Teresa, you have to leave? Okay. See you next time.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I too have a meeting at 1 o'clock. and
Okay.
I know we have an executive committee scheduled after this.
Well, yeah, that's right, we do.
Well, so that point's true. It was true when the MSR was done. It's still true. It's something will be looked at more in depth with the next MSR update, I would think.
And I'm sorry I have to be redundant like Kevin too, but it says here the financial planning efforts of Leggett include an annual adopted budget, which I see here, and financial audit reports prepared by a CPA annually. So back in Laytonville, what I'd like to see in the financial ability of the agency to provide service under page 19, that they be added in here what Laytonville says, and that is starting with fiscal year 2015-16, the district now has annual financial audits performed by a certified CPA. And again, adding in that preparing annual audits, the district is now depreciating its capital assets. I think we need to put that in this one as well, because she's concerned about the viability of the company. We need to see the actual net income.
And that's
I
an
know, John.
that's an
MSR.
MSR determination. So,
But it was added in the Laytonville one. These are new line items.
it was new language added in.
Yes. It's under, they were line items that added. Anyway, I'm concerned too about these fire departments as well, and we just need to see a true picture on what they have.
Well, what they did here, they're reflecting facts on the ground. The Long Valley is providing an update to the recommendation that was made. If Leggett is still not, so it's not creating a new determination, it's simply saying what was done. I mean, I think I'm kind of agreeing with Kevin. We need to draw a line somewhere between rewriting the MSR, and if we're making a new determination, that's rewriting the MSR.
Okay, well, we're trying to make determinations here of whether they're functional fire departments, and we're not getting all the information.
We're focused now on the SOI and should it be expanded.
But we're also asking for updated financial information.
We asked for that for context.
And we're not getting it. Okay, I'm done with that. It's my, my job is...
So it occurs to me, we do ask a lot of staff. Because you're supposed to make sense out of all of this.
Yeah, but you're the biggest culprit.
I'll hold my comment.
All right, we done with Leggett? Okay, good.
It's nice to know what people really think.
No, I think you're our commissioner analyst, so you're doing a great job. We'll move on to item 7A, introduction to AB 54 LAFCo requirements for mutual water companies. This might be interesting too.
Thank you. At our last meeting, the commission requested that we bring forward an informational item about the mutual water companies and the requirements under Assembly Bill 54. Staff has been working on a report on mutual water companies in Mendocino County, and we'll bring that forward hopefully in April to the commission. So Assembly Bill 54 became effective January 1st, 2012, and had established new requirements for mutual water companies to cooperate with LAFCo. Mutual water companies are private corporations for the purpose of selling, distributing, supplying, or delivering water for domestic use or irrigation. Mutual water companies are organized under the California Corporations Code and regulated under the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Safe Drinking Water Act, and operate under local, state, and federal rules and regulations. In the past, they have not been regulated by either LAFCo or the California Public Utilities Commission, who is responsible for regulating investor-owned utilities. So AB 54 brings that forward into LAFCo's realm, and there are certain reporting requirements. Those reporting requirements include providing a map of the service area to their LAFCos, and they also must respond to requests for non-confidential information. They can be incorporated into municipal service reviews as long as that information is not proprietary. And it grants authority to LAFCo to approve annexations of mutual water company service area to a city or special district. So what staff has been working on is a discovery process to date to discover which mutual water companies apply under this AB 54. So far we've identified 11, and the clerk, Beth, and I are working on putting that together into a report, and they have until we've given them until February 9th to respond, and we'll have to do follow-up starting next week.
Carrie, you want to start?
Thank you. I go to background, and paragraph 1, it says delivering, selling, distributing, supplying, or delivering water. But it's irrigation purposes or for domestic use. What about industrial? Does AB 54 include, just a question that came up, because you hear a lot about M&I, municipal and industrial use. So I just wanted to bring that up. But then when you go to the third paragraph, and it states that the California Department of Public Health, that they're subject to regulation. And I think you mean the Drinking Water Division. Now, AB 54 probably didn't include this information because the Drinking Water Division that used to be with California Department of Public Health is now with the State Water Resources Control Board. along with water rights and other issues. So it was moved from public health over to the State Water Board, and I just wanted to make that distinction because I didn't want you to be confused if, and I'm sure AB 54, you know, states it just like you put here. But it's also, when you look on page 58 under Government Code 56430C and D, it also states about Department of Public Health over public water systems. But that is all, the jurisdiction and oversight has changed.
Thank you.
It says you'll identify these 11 mutual water companies and compile a brief profile and maps, but will you also add in there if they're compliant with the federal and state drinking water acts as well?
We'll look into that and see how readily available that information is. It should be on the drinking water.
It should be listed.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be listed.
Because that is, seems like an oversight we have now as well.
And just for general information, many times testing that needs to be done on all water systems when you have X amount of hookups. After Flint, Michigan, the federal government actually came in and audited California. And they did find that there were various companies or water managers, I guess I should say, that hadn't kept up with the federal requirements of testing. And so the feds required this testing to be done. I know of one water manager in this county that got caught up in that and fined. But in the Central Valley, they also found high levels of lead, just like in Flint, Michigan, that was going to a community, a very poor community. So, and I think there were more than just one, but the clarification on that, and thank you for asking about the testing. So I think you can just go to the website and see if they have met all their requirements or not.
Good.
Okay.
All right, we are short of time. Is there any other comments? So you'll be bringing us a report back when?
April, a draft in April.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to 8A, work plan, current and future proposals. If you don't mind, there hasn't a lot of changes. We don't really need to probably go into that. 8B, correspondence, any?
I don't think we had any.
Okay, 8C, executive office report.
Have we worn you out yet?
I'm getting there. I'm lost now. Hold on. Let's see. I just wanted to note that the special district nominations are due on the 15th. We have not yet received any. So we will have to reach out again if we don't get any. Larkin and I, our analyst, attended Cal LAFCo's course on LAFCo's evolving mission. And so we got an in-depth review of new laws, requirements, and transparency.
Good.
I just wanted to give you guys a quick report on that, and I won't go into all the details, but it was an excellent course. There was a big focus on transparency and preparing transparency action plans. And specifically, this came out of the Little Hoover Commission report. And Pamela, who is the executive officer for Cal LAFCo, wanted to let us all know that our websites are being utilized a lot by state legislators. That's the first place they go when they have questions about a county, is they look at the LAFCo's website at the reports and documentation that's there. So they really encourage doing a transparency plan, action plan, and then beefing up our websites. So there was a lot of information on that. They also brought forward that AB 979, which has to do with the RDA oversight boards, and Mendocino is on the list of needing to consolidate the oversight boards into a single oversight board. LAFCo does have a responsibility for performing the election of the special district representative to that board, and that has to be done by July 1st of this year, or the governor will appoint someone. The other thing that was interesting is they also, as a result of the Little Hoover Commission report, I lost my place. She encouraged us to, for each LAFCo, to look at the consolidation, whether there were consolidations that would be important to pull forward, and to prepare for one-time funding should that happen. And she felt that they would probably know by the end of February whether that would be appropriated in the state budget. But we should be ready to put forward an application for that and have some consolidations or special studies in mind to do that. And I can give more information for anyone who is interested, but I know we're running short on time today. So
Maybe we can go in a little more detail next meeting on
Okay.
some of those items, because those seem important. Okay, committee reports. Did the policy and procedure meet? No?
No.
Okay. Executive committees met, but we're meeting again in a few minutes, so Kevin can get out of here. Commission reports, comments, and questions. Cal LAFCo business and legislative report.
none at this time.
Okay. All right. We're adjourned. Where are we going to meet, Beth? Well.
You're still on mic.